I want to welcome everybody to this blab. We've got a bunch of people signed up, probably the most that I've seen for one of my blabs. And yeah, and of course, we'll get a lot of replays. Hey, Eugen. Eugen probably calling in from Thailand. So excellent. Okay, so he's usually in Romania. But anyway, so my guest today is Anthony Galie. And I just want to tell you a little personal thing about how I found out about this man, because it was really crazy. My friend Kenda Summers and I were doing a show in Iowa, a couple of shows in Iowa, and we were trying out some new routines that we were going to use at a hypnosis convention show that we were going to do. And a young hypnotist came in there. His name is Corey Osborne. And Corey has since become a really good friend. Anyway, Corey came to our show, and Corey is now a successful stage hypnotist. And Corey and I talked about the type of shows that hypnotists do. And I mentioned that I love to do high school shows and college shows because they're just so much fun. And we talked about corporate shows. And I said, I don't like them. I said, they pay better than any other show, but I don't like them. Why? Corey asked. And I said, because bad things can happen. You can show up at the show and nobody has told them there's going to be a hypnotist there. And you get lots of people looking at you like this, oh no, and saying encouraging things like, good luck getting volunteers, because I'm not getting up on that stage. So this is the sort of thing that you're greeted with when you do a corporate show. And people don't want to embarrass themselves in front of the bosses. The bosses don't embarrass themselves in front of the employees. It's a mess. And I said, corporate, yuck. And Corey said to me, well, have you ever heard of Anthony Galie? And I said, I'm not sure. It sounds familiar. But he said, Anthony Galie, you've got to look him up on YouTube. He said, you're going to find something amazing. So that night, I looked you up on YouTube and I watched it. And my first thought was, this guy has cracked the code. I went from hating corporate shows to thinking this is very cool. So I watched this man operate on YouTube with a corporate crowd in front of their peers, in front of their bosses, in front of their direct reports. And it was classy. It was fun. And as it was a corporate event, we all know corporate events pay far better than going to high schools and colleges and fairs and cruises and everything else. It's the best paying work out there. But as I say, I thought this man has cracked the code as far as how to make corporate really a viable option for a hypnotist. So I'd like to welcome Anthony Galie to this blab here. By the way, if you all have questions, if you want to ask a question, you want it to stand out, put a / and a Q and then type your question, and it'll appear in a special box here so we can see it. And the other thing is, on the left-hand side of your screen, you might see something that says Tell a Little Bird or Facebook. I know Kenda's already tweeted this, but if you would please click on that and let people know what you're listening to. I know a lot of hypnotists would get a lot out of this talk. So welcome, Anthony Galie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And you're in Germany, right?
I am in Germany.
The wonders of technology never ceases to fascinate me.
So I guess we have to start out with the question that everybody always asks, which is, how did you get started in hypnosis?
Everybody asks. Truth is, I saw a television program, black and white, no color TV, when I was 9 years old, and it had a spiel about hypnosis in it as part of the plot of this sitcom. And I just was like, what is that? And then went to my local library. I lived in a small town, and the only information I could find was in the Encyclopedia Britannica. The only reference to it at all. And I actually started buying stuff off the backs of comic books. You know, in those days, not kidding. And one book I got was rather a good book. It was, I don't know if you've ever heard this guy, Melvin Powers, and it was called Advanced Techniques.
Yes, of course.
And the guy was actually a well-written book, unbelievably so, you know, so it gave me some real information and some, you know, actually truth. And I ran around hypnotizing kids in the neighborhood for a while until they stopped me. And, I just got fascinated with it from a very early age. And as soon as I got my driver's license, I drove 2 towns over to a guy that was teaching courses. I have no idea if he ever, made a name for himself, but his name was Frank Lodato in Pennsauken, New Jersey. And then I went to Rutgers, and there was a gentleman there named Max Rapkin, who was a hypnotherapist, and he had, they would supplement their income by doing these 8 or 9 week long, how to become a hypnotherapist training courses. And that was the second course I took. And just with serendipity, I got noticed by one of my college professors. It was in those days, you could become what was called a casual worker for loading and unloading freight docks. I lived at Rutgers University, which is where I went, was fairly close to Edison, New Jersey, which is right outside of New York. And they had this just enormous freight depot, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trucks that fed New York. And they would sometimes hire college kids at $30 an hour, which in those days was just
big money, yeah.
But the shift was from midnight till 9 in the morning. And they worked the living daylights out of you. You were doing nothing but moving freight for 8 solid hours. And you just, you come out of there, you were covered from head to toe with the grit and the grime of the loading dock. And on some of those occasions, I'd have to race off to class. I mean, I'd get out at 9 and my class would start at 9:30 or whatever. So I'd go straight from work. And I was hypnotizing people at Rutgers, fraternities and dorm parties and things of that nature. And I'm sitting in this class, and at Rutgers, some of the intro psych classes, the year 1 and year 2 psych classes have 200-300 people in them. Those big amphitheaters. Yeah. And so I'm sitting in the amphitheater, and somebody raised their hand and asked a question and said, I saw this hypnotist at this fraternity last week do this thing where and it just looks impossible. And what do you think? And the professor answered it and gave what I thought was a wrong answer. It just was a wrong answer. And so I raised my hand, and he said, what? And I stood up and I said, well, I was the guy that did that. And I'm dressed, in my steel tip boots and covered in grime. Yeah. And so afterwards, he was genuinely interested, and he asked me, what books I had and what I knew. And so I shared with him some of my books, and he was kind enough to connect me with a professor that was doing active research in hypnosis at that time. His name was Dr. John Santa, and I became his research assistant for, I guess, the last 3 years of my college experience. And he was kind enough to turn me on to the professor down at the Florida Atlantic University when I went down to do my master's degree. So I was fortunate enough to be connected with some very fluent people in the science of hypnosis. And right after, as I was finishing my graduate program, one of the people that was in my graduate program, there were only 8 of us. When you go to a graduate level, it's not 100 people. It's usually 5 or 6 or 7 graduate students. I think there were 8 of us. Cohort, yeah. And one of the gentlemen was about 10 years older than I was, and he had actually had a hypnosis practice that he had built in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And he was going off to Tennessee. I was staying in the South Florida area, and he offered to sell me his practice, and then he taught me how to run it. So that's what got me into hypnotherapy, actually being a hypnotherapist. And I did that for a few years and then sold it. And then I moved to Hawaii, and I ended up moving in a very, very remote part of the Hawaiian Islands. I don't know how familiar you are, but I was on the East Rift of the Big Island. I was about 25 miles away from the caldera, Halemaumau, the world's most active volcano. I was about 20 miles away from that. So we'd see and feel, hear that nonsense, The earth would shake.
Do you lose a bet?
No, actually, if you can imagine the Garden of Paradise, if I don't know, the thing like you read in the book, Adam and Eve, if you have an image of what that's like, lush, gorgeous, palm trees, plumerias, passion fruit you just grab off the tree, coconuts. That's where I lived. Was as close on Earth as any place I've ever seen. It looked exactly like paradise. Unfortunately, it had no electricity, no public water, no telephones. It was beautiful, but it was pretty remote. And there just weren't enough people to continue the private practice, and that's when I got into the public speaking. So that's how it started. Okay,
excellent. So before you got into the public speaking, were you doing regular hypnosis shows as well, schools and?
Yes and no.
That
The
sort of
only
thing?
real shows I ever did, in terms of actual, quote unquote stage hypnosis, was through college. In my freshman year in college, I went. There was a guy there. I won't say name because somebody might. But anyhow, he was doing fraternities and stuff, and I went to see him do it. I looked at him and I said, "This guy sucks. This guy's not." I just thought it was really not that good, and I felt like I could do better than that. So I put something together and I started doing it. And like I said, for dorms and fraternities. And one day, one of the biggest fraternities on campus called and they were having a party. Someone heard about me. What do I charge? And it was $50. I said, it'd be $50 for me to go in and do my thing. And they called back a couple of days later and said that they decided not to use me. They were using this other guy. And I said, why? Well, because he charges $300. And, the brother sat around and just like, 6 times better than you are. And my price the next day went up to $300. And I was doing quite well. I was making, for those days, what was a fair amount of money. And about 6 months later, it was time to buy books and, the semester and all that jazz. And I remember calling my parents saying, you don't have to send me any money for books or whatever. And my father said, are you doing drugs? You selling drugs? Just like, no, I'm doing these hypnosis shows. Well, what the heck is that? Well, why don't you come and see it? And they did. My mom and dad, much to their credit, the next time I had a thing, they both came up and they both saw it. And they didn't understand it, but they were, as usual, very supportive of anything I chose to do. They were amazed. And, from that moment forward, they were kind of behind me 100%. And so that was really the only shows I ever did that I can recall.
Okay.
And then, as I say, I went into the research and then the hypnotherapy. And to promote the hypnotherapy practice, I did a lot of public speaking. I would go out and speak to Lions clubs and women's clubs and condo clubs and stuff like that, telling them about hypnotherapy. The shows really didn't, the quote unquote shows didn't start until somewhat later. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds as though, all right, you were doing hypnotherapy. So one of the things that I've noticed is that for those people who are already doing hypnotherapy, certain aspects of stage are a little bit easier because when you're very, very confident in your ability to hypnotize people, then you can concentrate on the other aspects of the show. So obviously you were a very confident hypnotist when you began doing these corporate shows.
There's no substitute for experience. A lot of times people will comment if they saw the presentation or if they see the videos, you just look so comfortable. It's so smooth. You make it look so easy. A lot of that is really just that I had done it for so long. I had made so many mistakes and done so many things wrong that you eventually figure out how to do it right. There's no substitute for experience. But having come from an experimental psychology background, my impulse is to always think numerically, think statistically. And I just one day, deduced correctly that 1 out of 10 are going to be a good subject. If I have an audience of 100 people, there's 10 good subjects there. I really, for demonstration purposes, don't need to worry about the other 90. Just find the 10. And within that sample space, 10 I found was kind of a pain in the neck to manage up on stage. All you really need is 5 or 6 of those 10. So you're golden, So it got to the point where, as I got more popular, some of the presentations I did were very large. A couple were like 5,000, which is enormous, actually. You can't see the back of the room. And I'd be in the green room, and you'd see someone, aren't you nervous? There's 5. Heck no, with 5,000 people, no. I used to joke, I could walk out, hold up a card that says sleep, and 10% would drop off. Just the larger.
Just drag up the limp bodies. Yeah.
I would get a little tensed out if they said there's 10 people out there, or your audience tonight is 12 50-year-old half loaded, CEOs. That would be something that would cause me pause. But
I've done that show.
Yeah, me too. Actually, on a number of occasions. But the larger the numbers, I just always looked at it as a numbers game. So it wasn't a matter of good subjects or bad subjects or whatever. It really just came down to statistics.
Yeah, I love a big crowd, and I'm with you. It's so many more somnambulists in a big crowd. But
10%.
When you're doing your corporate, when you're doing your corporate presentations, how many people do you like to have on stage?
Usually it would be 7 or 8.
Yeah,
the corporate presentations are a little bit different than entertainment or whatever. It was usually very rigidly timed. Sometimes they gave me carte blanche. We love it. Take as long as you need. If you want to take 2 hours, take 2 hours. But more often than not, it's part of the convention. You're the third or the fourth or the first or the last speaker, and you have a time that you are slotted to do. And one of the kind of rules of corporate speaking is you don't go beyond your time without permission. You clarify it up front. If it goes beyond 90 minutes, and they'll say no, we try to, we want them out here by 4 o'clock or whatever it is. So having the more people you have, the more things you have to do, so to speak, and the more management you have to do. And you saw the way I do it. I'll pick the good subjects and I'll go up one at a time and do these kind of rapid inductions. So if you have 10, it added 20% to the time as opposed to 8. So it was a lot of the reason it ended up with 7 or 8 on stage was simply a matter of time management. If they gave me all the time in the world and there were 25 somnambulists, I'd be happy to bring 25 up. I mean, the more the merrier. But it was really just a matter, corporate is a little bit, it's business. It's business. So
I think that's an excellent point you make, that when they allot you a certain amount of time, take that amount of time and no more. And that also goes for hypnotists that are giving talks to the Garden Club and the Kiwanis and that sort of thing. If they say 22 minutes, they finish at 22 minutes, because they don't like that when you run over.
No, they don't. And they'll report it back to the speaker bureau. They'll say, great, I love the guy, but he blew our schedule. And they just and on the other side, there are some groups that couldn't care less. Absolutely couldn't care less. There's a thing I posted not too long ago, a presentation I did in London at the Barbican Center, and it was quite a production. It was a couple of thousand people, and they couldn't have told me more times. You have whatever it was. I think it was 50 minutes. 51 minutes, we're going to turn the mic off. You're literally. And they had a big box. You have those speakers facing you right in the center. There's a big box with a green light and a red light. And when you see the light go red, you got 5 minutes before we shut up. I mean, they weren't mean about it, but they were absolutely, we have a schedule, we have a schedule, we have a schedule. So I rehearsed that one. I knew how long 50 minutes was. So I did my thing and I was finished. I'm done. It's 50 minutes and the light's still green. So, hey, maybe I, did it faster than I thought I did. So I did another bit and I looked down, it's still green. I did another thing, it's still green. I wrapped it up. And I go back, and it's actually on YouTube. They brought me out a second time for a standing ovation, which was, really kind of cool. And so it's like, well, how long was I say, oh, we don't know. We were liking it so much we stopped looking. You could have gone. And but it was, they couldn't have told me more. Like they must have told me a dozen times, you go beyond that time, we're going to shut you off. And I kept looking for the light to change. And then, finally I wrapped it up. Oh, that was so great. You could have done another 10 things. They would, it's just like, so
that's funny.
Corporate strange. It just, you have to do what they want. You can't really,
if you have,
I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Now that's the customer. Yeah. So sorry about that. So if you have carte blanche, how long would you like to do your show? 90 minutes? Is that
2 hours was my ideal show, because
really,
because it's not just the hypnosis. It's the way I organized it was really very clearly a 50-50 split. I had something to say. I mean, aside from the fun part and the hypnosis and demonstration, I mean, I clearly believed that you could change your behavior by, modifying the visualization. And I really wanted people to understand and stop and think about thinking. We have certain assumptions we make about our own consciousness and how much control we have over our thinking and what's going on inside our head. And I just had what I thought were some insightful ways of looking at it. So if I had carte blanche, I would spend a full hour talking about, for lack of the content, the more serious stuff. And then the second half would have been the demonstration. And 90 minutes was the most common format. But then many of them were an hour, and the shortest I think I ever did it was 45 minutes. Shorter than that was 45. Real difficult for me.
Yeah, I wonder about that. What 45 minutes is short, particularly in your program, because you're not just doing a hypnosis show, you're also doing a motivational speech or an informative speech. So who beyond, any shorter than 45 minutes, I imagine that would be pretty difficult. Would you turn down a job if they gave you 30
Hell
minutes?
no. I'd figure it out. It's just like, are you crazy? No.
Yeah, sometimes I am.
But no, I didn't turn down bookings. And if they said you got to do it all in 15 minutes, I'd figured it out somehow.
All right. So let's talk about the state of the industry.
The floor level, the entry level for corporate speakers is $5,000 plus expenses. And the reason that's the entry level is if you're ever going to get booked by a speaker bureau, they collect either a 20 or a 25% commission. And if they have a choice between two speakers, one that says is a hypnotist for $10,000 and the other that's a hypnotist for $2,500, you can bet they're going to be booking a $10,000 speaker, whether that person's better or not. Sometimes, I mean, they will. But if you've got two adequate speakers, strangely enough, and because they're collecting a commission, and why would they want to get a commission on $2,500 when they can get a commission on, so kind of the entry level before they'll even pay attention to you, before it's worth their effort to book you. You start out at 5,000, and then if you're any good, you rapidly move up. And I keep using 10,000 as the marker, just for the record. The mark's moved. It's 15 now. If you're decent, it's 12.5 to 15 is the new, the new present. So that's why you want to get to that level. That's why you want to really start at that level.
Well, why? I mean, all right. So that's one very good reason that a hypnotist would want to make the switch to doing corporate speaking. I mean, that's obviously they're going to be making a heck of a lot more money. But what are the other advantages to a hypnotist to get into the corporate gang?
It depends on whether you're looking at it from a monetary point of view or a personal satisfaction point of view. For me, in terms of the personal satisfaction, when I was doing the hypnotherapy, I loved it. I always looked at it as artistry, because every client you had, if you were good, you had to approach them differently. You had to mold your technique for their needs. You couldn't it wasn't cookie cutter. Everybody was new and different. So I looked at it as putting keys into a lock, and I loved it. But it was like one person at a time. And then when I did the corporate speaking, as I say, sometimes it was 5,000 at a time. More often than not, it was 300 or 400 at a time. But just the impact you were having on people's lives, the number of people you could impact, was so much larger. So from that kind of pure professional point of view, just the ability to reach so many more people was appealing to me. And my wife often jokes about it. I'm sure the same thing happens to you. I regularly get emails, not every day, but relatively often. I attended your program 10 years. It changed my life. I heard you do this, really made a difference, or really was important to me. And my wife will get these. She's kind of funny. She goes, "You're still a jerk," but she'll read the email, and she'll say, some people wouldn't get an email like this in their lifetime. They would be thrilled to get something like, you changed my life once in their life. And you get them like weekly or monthly. And she goes, and that is another, to know that you're having that kind of impact, that number of people, it was appealing from that purely professional point of view. And then the other side of it is clearly the monetary part. All of a sudden you're traveling first class, you're playing with the big boys. The audiences tend to be the high producers. When they send me to Cabos, or when they sent me to the Palm Springs and stuff, they're not sending their losers to Palm Springs. They're sending the award winners, the high producers. I did an interview not too long ago, and it reminded me of something. I would routinely take my product and put it on an 8-foot table, the CDs and the DVD. And then when it was time for me to speak, I would leave, and typically the table was outside the room. And then I was going to do my presentation. At the end, I'd come out, and whoever wanted to purchase could purchase. And often people would come up and say, "Are you just going to leave those CDs sitting on a table like that?" Well, yeah. You want me to get a cover them? No, you don't have to do that. I was like, well, why are you leaving them there? And it was simple. Number one, the type of people that I was speaking to don't steal. I mean, they don't have to be ripping off CDs. And my second thing was, anybody, who's desperate enough to swipe a CD, a motivational CD, probably needs it. I mean, what am I hope it helps. and the paradox was, I think maybe twice I'd come out and a set would be missing, but it was just, so the point was, that's the kind of people you're dealing with. That's the, not that there's anything at state fairs or anything, but it's a different mentality. It's you're dealing with a corporate audience, which I think, from a purely monetary point of view, material point of view, is very rewarding. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And
yeah, this seems to be a parallel also with hypnotherapy, because I know that hypnotherapists that charge $75 a session get a different clientele than hypnotherapists that charge $250 a session.
Isn't that weird?
And yeah, and often their results are better because there's more, the client places more value in the therapy.
Like I said,
so I could see that
early on. We're going with that other guy because he charges $300 and you're charging $50. He's got to be 6 times better than you.
He must be. Yeah, must be better. And often he will be better just because that's a perception of the client. I mean, the client was going to value that that person's help more.
Right.
And also they're invested. Your corporate clients are invested if they're paying you $15,000 for your talk. How about, I know some speakers, corporate speakers, also get into training, add-on things. Have you ever done anything like that? Or
I didn't when I was doing the public speaking. A very good friend of mine, in fact, a guy who was a roommate for 2 years in college, who is a motivational speaker. His name is Bob Davies. He's excellent, does a presentation on peak performance. He comes from an athletic background. And he, for years, was saying that he would do his presentation, and at the end of his talk, he would say that I take a select group of people for personal coaching, personal professional coaching. And if you have an interest, come and see me, on the side. So he didn't make a big deal about it in his motivational presentation, but he put it out there that if you want personal one-to-one coaching, and there would, be a percentage of people that would come. And he charged a relatively high premium. I know, I think I have the numbers right, that if you signed up with him, I think it was either $6,000 or $8,000 initial investment. You had guarantee for the first 3 months that you wouldn't drop out. It was like, and then it was, I believe, $1,000 a month afterwards. And he would speak to you once every 2 weeks. And he had a website set up where they would set their goals, and they'd be able to monitor their goals, and they had to fill in what they had accomplished, and there was accountability. And I do recall, during the 2008 crash, when pretty much the economy of the country really slowed, we were having a conversation, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. So, well, if it was not for my coaching, I'd be in trouble, because the niche he had was severely hit by the recession. So that's a personal friend that I know did that, and other people would do that. They would target companies and industries, and they would offer personalized sales training, and there's all kinds of different directions you can go in. I mean, there really is a lot you can do.
Yeah, and also, his model, he had a second stream of income.
Exactly,
which is
diversifying your income.
Say that's good.
Well, that's something that a lot of people that came to the masterclass, that they by the way were an unbelievably great group of people. I could not have asked for a better group for a first class. They were wonderful. But a couple of them I've spoken to, what product do you have to sell? Well, I don't have any product. You should have product. I mean, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy or whatever, but you should be offering something at the end of your presentation, and it will ultimately be an additional 20% in income on the average. Sometimes you sell a ton of it, but it averages out to about 20% of your income. You should put together a set of CDs or a DVD or write a book. And if you don't know how to write a book, get someone to write one for you. But you should have, there's nothing wrong with hiring a professional ghostwriter, but you should have something to offer at the end, because if you do your job well, they're going to want to take a piece of you home with them. And it, there are days when it just all comes together, where it's just amazing. Even you're amazed. Holy smoke, that was unbelievable. And if you have product to sell, they'll buy anything. Here, take my Jag. Want to buy my Jag? They'll buy anything. And I'm not sure they ever listened to any of it. This is the God's honest truth. At one point, this was back when I was selling tapes instead of CDs, I guess it would be the late 90s. I really was. I had this package of 12 tapes that I would sell, and I don't think anybody ever listened to it. I was going to take tape 11 and 12 and just put blank tapes in there and see how long it would take before someone called and complained. They're never going to get down to number 12. You know, there's maybe 1% that's actually going to listen to this stuff.
You know, it's a shame to say, but yeah, that's true. So many people buy products and they don't use them. True. Very true.
And I'm not saying put out a bad product or something. They put out the highest quality product you can, but if you do well, if you have a good day, and you will have lots of good days, you know, the more you practice, there's a percentage of people that are going to want to continue that experience, and they will buy product. And there's really no reason in the world. It's in this day and age where it's so easy to produce CDs and to have books written. And when I wrote my book, I had to buy 13,500 of them to get the price down to where it was. I was paying $4 or $5 a book, whatever it was. And I remember they came in with a 40-footer and they loaded them into my garage on pallets, and I would take them, box of 50 or 100 at a time to sell them. And today, with digital printing, you can call and say, "I need 20 books." It's a different world. So there's really no reason not to have product to sell. And I'm not saying hammer product sales. I'm just saying if you liked it, happen to be an author of a book, or if you want some tapes or CDs, happen to have these CDs in the back, doesn't have to be a hard sell.
Sure. And I could imagine that some of your corporate gigs, though, you wouldn't be allowed to. I mean, some of the corporate gigs, they don't want you to.
You're exactly. You always clear that with the client in advance. When you typically when you get the bid and they're considering you, would you be available? Yes. Okay. They decide they want to use you, and you typically set up a conference call with them, a needs analysis, and you bring that up then. It's entirely your call. I do have products, no problem. I typically sell them at the back of the room or outside. If you provide an 8-foot table, if they say we don't allow product sales, no problem. No,
right.
But most will allow you if someone hasn't come in and killed it for you. Right. I was a few years back doing a thing for Sprint in Kansas City. They're based out of Kansas City. And it was a big talk. It was a few thousand people at the corporate headquarters. And in the contract, I'd spoken to the people. Can I sell my product? Yes. I brought my display, I put it up. And I was due to go in right after lunch. So I set it up while everybody was having lunch. And my liaison came up to me and said, Anthony, I know that you asked to do this, and I know it says it in the contract, and but would you mind not selling product? No, and I'll tell you why. We had this speaker today, and he just sold the heck out of this book. I'm going to give you a piece of it now, but if you really want to understand it, you got to buy my course because CD and everything. And he went on and on and on about it, and then at the end, he went through this 15-minute long sales pitch. And when it came time to where he said, okay, now how many of you are going to buy my product? The vice president literally got up on stage and said, none of you are buying anything from this guy. He was furious. He said, we paid this guy whatever they paid him. And it was just, and she said, it's nothing you've done. So one person who overdoes it can kill a company for 5 years. I doubt Sports ever going to let anybody sell product at their presentation.
Right. And I'm sure that wasn't very good for his career going forward.
Some people look at it. I don't know why some people look at it different than I do. For some, see it clearly as a positive thing. I don't. So.
No. I mean, I think you're there to please your customer, and it's nice to get back of the room sales, but it's even nicer to get customers that rave about you and tell people, hey, Jim, how are you doing? And tell people that you're a good speaker and you're not one of these pushy people that's out there trying to sell his book and his tapes and everything like that. So it's nice. Another thing that just occurs to me is that that conference call that you do with the prospective customer is probably a very important call. That's
the needs analysis.
So
right. Very important.
Needs analysis. Right. Yeah. So I imagine somebody who can master that is going to be far more successful than a a corporate speaker that doesn't know how to handle himself or herself in that kind of a situation. So I'm sure.
I think it's extremely important that you do that. Here's the difference. Through the years, obviously, when I go to all these conferences, I often will see the speaker before me or the speaker after me, or I've heard a lot of speakers, and some have a canned delivery. You know, I could see them in front of one group and then a different company and a different company. And it's the same speech. And one thing that I did to differentiate mine early on, and it's such an easy thing to do, is you have these calls beforehand and you try to learn a little bit about the company, a little bit about what they're trying to accomplish, what the theme of the conference is, what new products are, what's going on, any events that are happening within the company. And usually with 10 minutes or less of effort, you can include that and reference that throughout your presentation. And people, it just has such an amazingly more powerful impact. It's just, you sound like you're talking to me to what we're doing, as opposed to, you know, and I don't know why all speakers don't do it. They don't.
Yeah.
But the ones that
I saw.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just saw Denise giving you clicking props here because another corporate or another stage hypnotist and hypnotherapist, Denise Hall, because that's one of her big things too, is getting together with the client and getting some intelligence on what's going on in the company so that you can give them a special, how do I want to put this? I'm having a little trouble here. So yeah, you can personalize your presentation to them. Exactly. And then another thing that I think is always a good idea is to get with them when you arrive and make sure that there's nothing that you don't know that you should know that could get you in trouble during your presentation, because you don't know what's just happened to the company. They've just appeared in the New York Times, or worse than that, a tabloid. What's going on? Something terrible just happened to the CEO. I mean, you need to know these things before you get on stage. And
take it one step beyond. You're absolutely correct. It could not be more on the mark. You do your pre-talk with the powers that be, the people that are hiring you, the decision makers. And when you get there, you reaffirm it. You know, this is what the topics I'm going to cover. And then you do one more thing to make it perfect. You get there at least, whatever you're talking, at least an hour, 45 minutes before you have to speak. And if they have a coffee break, you go out and talk to the actual people in the conference. What's going on? What's important to you? What do you think is happening? Because sometimes what the powers that be think is happening is not necessarily in line with the ground level people. And there's no reason why you can't do both. There's no reason why you cannot address the issues that the powers, you always want to please the client. There's no reason why you cannot custom design your presentation to please the client. And if you take just a few more minutes and talk to some of the people on the ground, also include things that people on the ground think are important, so everybody's happy. And it's real simple, but a lot of people don't do it.
360. Yeah. Perfect.
I don't know, I guess pet beeps or whatever. I saw a presentation once where a stage hypnotist, actually more than once, gives the subject suggestions, whatever the suggestion happens to be. And the subjects perform it beautifully, whatever the suggestion happens to be. And the hypnotist stands forward and takes a bow. And they're clapping it. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, wait a minute, you didn't do anything. They're the ones that did that incredible thing. And so very early on in my career, I just realized that it's really all about them, not about me. And if anything, I will do the best to diminish my influence. I'll say, that person is doing an amazing thing. They're actually exhibiting a really outstanding degree of concentration or whatever. And a lot of my stuff was filmed. And I learned that I had to go to the video people before the event started and say, because the way I did it was, if the subject did something amazing, I was always trying to explain it to the rest of the group. Not being able to find your shoe in your hand is actually an example of what's called a negative hallucination. Happens all the time, and I'd stand off to the side and explain what that person over there was doing. And first few times I did that, I'd look at the video, and what the video guy had done was zoomed in on me. Now here's the subject doing an absolutely incredible thing, and it's like, and no, it's not about me. If you see that happen and you make sure you zoom in on them, that's what's amazing. Not me standing there talking about it. So
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
early on, I just think that there are some, certainly not even the majority, but there are some of the stage hypnotists that think it's all about them. And I just think they'd be better served by focusing on the client or on the person as opposed to themselves.
Absolutely. We're not the star. The people in the chairs, the committee, they're the stars of the show. And I think probably most of us would agree with that, but you're right. There are some that would not. Hey, I wanted to bring up something. Now you have a couple of classes coming up.
I do.
You have one in Florida and one in Frankfurt, Germany.
Yes.
And I'll post the links to these classes. But the people that come to this class to learn how to do what you do, they're expected to already be hypnotists, right? They're expected to already. You're not teaching them how to hypnotize.
In the first class we did, nobody hypnotized anybody, which just seems strange to have a room full of hypnotists where no hypnosis takes place. The idea is that you have a core competency in hypnosis. If you're a stage hypnotist, if you're a psychologist that uses hypnosis, a hypnotherapist, a holistic healer that uses hypnosis, there were chiropractors, there were people involved in all kinds of aspects of healing and health. And you want to take your skills as a hypnotist and learn how to market them to the corporate market, how to put it together as a corporate keynote. Which is what I did. My topic was goal setting. That certainly doesn't have to be your topic, but I use goal setting as a vehicle to get my message across. That's what the master class is about. So it's not a hypnosis 101 course. And the group we had come were all extremely accomplished, very experienced. Many of them, you would know their names. Catherine Hicklin was there, Dylan Counts, Incredible Boris was there. Incredible, he's been there for any of us. Incredible Boris has been around as long as I have. And just, that was the caliber of people that came, that truly.
Yeah, I know a lot of those guys. Yeah.
Oh, what a wonderful group. And everybody clicked, and it was just everybody helping each other. It was a truly magical event. I mean, I still can't get over it. And yeah, there are two of them. We're having, as you say, the first one is going to be in July in Frankfurt on the weekend, the 16th and 17th. And the second program will be in Orlando, the 6th and the 7th, again, Saturday and Sunday, 6th and 7th of August in Orlando. And if you post the link, that would be wonderful. And there's an early bird discount that goes away in, I guess, about 7 or 8 days at the end of the month on the 30th. It's a $500 off discount. But I was advised to do something here on a live blog, and I think I discussed it with you. Is it okay if I do this?
Sure, of course.
If anyone, I've activated a coupon on the site. If you make a decision to come, if you go to the website, follow the link, and if you are interested in taking the course, if you sign up before the 30th of April, you get $500 off. If you want an additional $200 discount for the next 24 hours, I've activated a coupon. If you use Stripe to sign up, you can either do it with PayPal or Stripe. If you go Stripe to sign up, you'll see a promotional box where you can enter a coupon. If you just put the number 200 in there, it will take $200 off the price, and I'll keep that active for 24 hours for people that were motivated enough to be part of this live chat.
Okay, great. What we do is I've just posted the two links.
Thank you.
The one to the Frankfurt course, no problem, and the one to the Orlando class. Could you say just a few words about how the course is run, the 2 days, how that is laid out?
Clearly broken into two distinct parts. Day number one is all about putting the corporate presentation together. And we talk about, first you have to identify what your brand is, and then showing you how to do the needs analysis that we were talking about, how to construct your talk so that it adds value to the convention or conference that you're speaking to, exactly the formula for doing the talk, how to segue into a hypnosis demonstration, and then how to take everything you're doing in the demonstration and relate it back to the original talk. The idea is, in the corporate world, is that people come out of your presentation with something hands-on. At the corporate level, they don't want entertainment as much as they want value. What are my people going to get from having come to your talk? What skill, what knowledge, what technique that's going to make them more productive, better salespeople, more motivated, more relaxed, whatever it happens to be? What's the value? And so we show you how to first identify the brand, do the needs analysis. First day is all about constructing and developing the actual talk. Day number two is, all right, you got your talk. How do you market it? What markets do you go after? I call it the spiderweb approach. How do you take an industry such as real estate, insurance, financial services, IT? How do you target an industry, get through the front door, and then use that as a platform. And then another part of it is, how do you get yourself booked by bureaus? And we actually have, coming to both of the talks, a former bureau rep. This guy booked me like 100 times. He worked for a rep out of Colorado. He actually knows all about what the bureau is looking for. And he's got an excellent presentation about, as a bureau rep, this is what I'm looking for in your demo tape. This is what I want to see on your website. These are the words I want to hear you say. This is what I want to hear the client say afterwards. I mean, he shows you exactly how this is the kiss of death. I don't want to hear about prima donnas that, you went and screamed and yelled and had a T-bone steak for room service and a bottle of champagne. And they do. My expenses are paid. Yeah. You'd be amazed at what some people do.
Oh my God.
But I mean, some of the stuff that sounds like it'd be common sense, but a lot of times people go, I never thought of that. And he's just actually. So the all day two is, you got your talk. Now here's all the different aspects of marketing it. How to do the product sale in like I say, in 3 minutes or less. It's not a big hammer them over the head, but here are the elements you want to do. It's just the whole aspects of marketing. So day number 1 is put the talk together. Day number 2 is how to market it. And then we build into the course 2 coaching calls, because I know that most people are not going to walk out the door and not run into some roadblock or problem or something they didn't get at the program. So as part of the price, anytime in the next 6 months, they're entitled to 2 coaching calls at their convenience. And it's really, that really made a difference, because there are a number of people that, went right at, started using it, and they ran into a situation that they didn't quite understand. We'd set up a conference call or a coaching call, on the phone with them for an hour, problem solved. You'd probably be hard pressed to find some aspect of the business that I haven't screwed up at some point. To put it, I look at, honest to God, this is the way I look at this course. It took me like 5 or 6 years of making mistakes before I got to where I was making a decent living in this business. My goal in these courses is to cut that 5 years out for you. Whatever mistake could have been made, I made it. So I can show, I can show you how to avoid the minefields and get right to, once you figure it out, it's not rocket science, it's not difficult. It's a system. So that's the course.
Yeah.
And we got these testimonials. If you go to the website, go to the testimonials page. The people that actually went in January, that are actually out there scheduling corporate talks, really doing it, really, changing their lives. We now have a track record. When I first put these courses together, I believed that in a weekend we could teach people how to do this. Now I know we can. Now we've got the track record. So.
Excellent. Yeah, I just posted that that link to the testimonials there. And video testimonials are so good. I mean, it's so different from a written testimonial where you could have a ellipsis, and what was in there, and damning with faint praise and that sort of thing. It's hard to, I mean, when you got a video testimonial, it's easy to tell what the student really thought. And I have looked at some of those testimonials, and they're pretty good. So
I'm not sure I should share this. But
what did you pay them? What did you?
Let me tell you what happened. That was such a magical group. They were. I am so proud of them. I feel like they're my children going out and they're really actually doing it. The day after the course, first of all, at the end of the first day, I was kind of tired. I'd done, and I went upstairs, went to bed. They stayed up till like 3 a.m. They all huddled into groups of 5 or 6, and they were going over. They were into it, cool. They've all stayed in touch. And the day after the course, one of them opened up a private Facebook group. My group is called Corporate Hypnotist. He opened up a group called Corporate Hypnotist Masterclass. And he sent invitations to all the people that had attended the course, and they all signed up. Now they got their own private Facebook page, and they smirk at my other page. Oh, those guys, they don't know anything. And it's one of the most interesting pages, because they're all trying to help each other. Every day they come up with something new. I mean, it's a really powerful, and they're all helping each other get to where they want to go. It's a remarkable group of people. And, you know, setting up these second seminars, this is actually the second time we've done it. We're just looking forward to doing it again, you know, to get a group together. And we're talking about putting their private group together and seeing how they compare to what the first group does. Because when they've gone through the training and they understand what the concepts are, they're all out there helping each other. That's why you don't see them on my old corporate page. You know, they all abandon that. You know, and they're too good for that. Kind of like that, but they really have done amazing things. I'm truly impressed with their accomplishments. So very proud of them.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, we're coming up on our hour. So any final thoughts you'd like to share before we end the recording?
You know, it's the European class is my first time in Europe. And one comment I've heard from a couple folks is we don't really have a lot of speaker bureaus over here, and it's not structured the same way it is in the United States. And I'm fully aware of that. So the class in Europe is going to be structured, and the emphasis is going to be a little bit different than what the emphasis is over in the Orlando class. But in Europe, you have banks, real estate firms, investment firms, IT firms, just like any country or city does. And that's the corporate market. And they all have meetings. They all bring their people together, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. There's really no difference. A gentleman that I had coached now down in Brazil, Rafael Beltresca. Again, no speaker bureaus. I think they have 1 speaker bureau down there. And so no speaker bureaus to speak of. He, you know, I showed him how he's penetrated the corporate market, and he's saying, you know, this is duplicatable. Any modern country is going to have all the infrastructure you need to do this kind of activity. So don't freak out thinking, well, we don't have speaker bureaus here, therefore it wouldn't work for me. It absolutely would.
Yeah, it could be a wide open market.
It is a wide open market.
Very fertile ground.
Yeah.
Interesting. And as someone had a quick question, I think it was Eugene was asking about people from Europe getting gigs in the U.S.
There are absolutely no restrictions that I'm aware of for anybody from any country coming in here to give a speech for any group. And for example, one of the attendees in our program was Mustafa Badaway. And Mustafa's from Colombia. He's actually the star of that program. Why can't I get the name straight? In the back room. You're back in the room. I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh, back in the room. Okay. Yes.
And he's doing the Colombian version. He's actually filmed 15 episodes. And he was in Orlando 2 weeks ago. We got together for lunch. And he says, yes, Colombian telecommunications company is having their convention here at Orlando. And they wanted me to come and give the speech. So, you know, I'm Colombian. They brought me. No restrictions whatsoever.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You take a German company like Siemens, right?
Exactly.
They're very big in the U.S. Bring a cool.
And very then cool the other side of the coin is, as an American, I spoke numerous times in Canada, South America, Rome, Paris, Monte Carlo, London on a number of occasions, Cairo twice, Singapore, Philippines. Absolutely no restrictions. So you will have, once you gain notoriety and once you gain a level of proficiency, that was one of the fun parts of the job. So you got sent all over the place.
And that's great. And also you've got a big corporate name. And if any legwork needs to be done, if any, you know, boxes need to get checked with the government, they can do that for the speaker. So I like that. That's really cool. So I'm glad you asked that question there.
You met him. Went over to Orlando, over to Universal City Walk, and I'm over here because the Colombian company brought me up to speak to their group. So no problems at all.
Yep. Perfect. Very cool. All right. Well, any other final thoughts before we stop the recording?
I hope you all come to the program. I promise a life-changing event. I'm looking forward to meeting you when I come over there. I understand that Frankfurt is very close to your digs, and we'll finally get a chance to meet in person. I'm looking forward to it. I'll do a great job for you guys. And hey, Sean, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great talking with you. And thank you all for tuning in here.
Thank you. All
right, take care. Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.